Hi, my friends. My calendar tells me it's Wednesday. I don't know if it's true for you, but I'm having a little trouble keeping track because all the days seem so very, very much alike these days while we're doing the shelter at home and preventative distancing. And that's okay. It's a hard time for our brains and our bodies and our spirits to figure out everything that's going on. So we just need to be a little gentle with ourselves. The sun is shining here, which is lovely. I thought it was going to be a bit gray and gloomy today, but it's not. I took a nice long walk and I waved to a bunch of people, and they were all keeping their distancing and doing good things like that. And there have been lots of puppies with their people walking by my house this morning, which is fabulous. And I have a little bit of a longer story today, so that's why I'm posting it pretty early in the day. But my friend Sally lent me some books because I have the Winnie the Pooh books, but they don't have very many pictures in it. And I thought pictures would be better for our videos because it's so much more fun to see the story with pictures. So we're going to have a Winnie the Pooh story today from her book that Sally lent me. And there are bunches of them in there, The Many Adventures of Winnie the Pooh. So we're going to have Winnie the Pooh and the Honey Tree. Now these are the versions that Walt Disney made into books and stories and TV shows and all of those good things. Radio first, maybe. I don't remember. Anyway, these are the Walt Disney versions based on the stories by A.A. Milne, who wrote the Winnie the Pooh stories. And I have his books, which is why they don't have as many pictures. But Walt Disney liked lots of pictures. So here is Winnie the Pooh and the Honey Tree. It says Janet Campbell, so I think that's who put the story together. And illustrated by John Kurtz. Here we go. In a little house deep in the 100-acre wood, a very round bear named Winnie the Pooh was doing his slimming exercises. He was breathing deeply when all of a sudden he felt his tummy rumble. "Oh my," said Pooh, "this up and downing is making me hungry." Pooh hurried to the cupboard and got out his honey pot. "Bother," said Pooh, "there's nothing left but the sticky part." But the sticky part was better than no honey at all, so Pooh stuck his nose into the pot and licked up the last little bit. With his head deep inside the pot, Pooh heard a buzzing sound. "That buzzing means something," Pooh said. Pop! He pulled his head out and saw a bee fly out his window. "Buzzing means bees," said Pooh. "And where there are bees, there's usually honey." Pooh followed the bee through the 100-acre wood. When he came to the foot of a very tall tree, he looked up and saw the bee buzzing around a hole. "Honey," said Pooh, and he began to climb. He climbed and he climbed all the way up the tree, all the way up to the hole. It's a very long way for a tiny bear to climb. As Pooh leaned forward, the branch began to bend. The more he leaned, the more the branch bent, until he could almost reach the honey. He leaned just a little bit more, and snap went the branch, and down fell Pooh. He bounced from branch to branch until he ran out of branches. And landed headfirst in a bush. "Oh my," said Pooh, rubbing his sore head. "I guess it all comes from liking honey so much." Pooh rubbed his head so hard that he came up with an idea. He would borrow a balloon from his friend Christopher Robin. You can't get honey with a balloon, Christopher Robin told Pooh. I can, said Pooh. I shall hang on to the string and float up to the bee hole, he explained. Then Pooh rolled himself in mud until he was covered from his nose to his toes. I'm pretending to be a little black storm cloud, Pooh told Christopher Robin, to fool the bees. Silly old bear, said Christopher Robin. He watched Pooh float up, up, up into the sky and dangle right beside the hole. I don't think it's going to work. Pooh reached in and pulled out a pawful of golden honey as the bees began to buzz suspiciously around his head. Christopher Robin, called Pooh. I think the bees suspect that I'm not a little black storm cloud. With a swoosh, the balloon string loosened, and the balloon began to lose air. It swooshed under Pooh, and it swooshed over Pooh, and then it rose high above the treetops, with Pooh traveling along for the ride. Oh my, said Pooh. Then the balloon had no more air at all, and down Pooh went, landing right on top of Christopher Robin. Oh dear, said Pooh, shaking his head. I guess it all comes from liking honey too much. By then, it was lunchtime, and Pooh was hungrier than ever. So he sat down to think, and he thought first about honey and then about Rabbit, because Rabbit always had some honey in his house. Pooh hurried to Rabbit's house. There he is, thinking and thinking. Come in, Pooh, said Rabbit. Why, thank you, Rabbit, said Pooh. How about some lunch? Rabbit asked, knowing perfectly well what Pooh's answer would be. Would you like condensed milk or honey on your bread? Both, Pooh answered. But never mind the bread, he added, so as not to appear greedy. Rabbit sat... big truck going by. Rabbit sat at the table and watched Pooh eat. First, Pooh had a little helping of condensed milk and then a little helping of honey. Then he had another helping of condensed milk and another helping of honey. Pooh ate and ate and ate and ate. At last, Pooh rose slowly from the table and said in a rather sticky voice, "Goodbye, Rabbit. I must be going." Rabbit sighed. Well, Pooh, if you're sure you won't have any more. Is there any more? Asked Pooh. No, said Rabbit wearily. There isn't. I thought not, said Pooh. And he started out Rabbit's front door. Pooh's head reached the outdoors, and his feet dangled indoors, but his middle got stuck in the middle. Pooh tried to go out. He couldn't. He tried to go in, but he couldn't do that either. Bother, said Pooh. It all comes from not having a big enough front door. Nonsense, said Rabbit sharply. It all comes from eating too much. And he hurried out his back door to fetch Christopher Robin. Now there was nothing for Pooh to do but wait. He looked at the trees blowing in the breeze. He watched the clouds sailing by in the blue sky. Then he wiggled his bottom and kicked his legs just in case, but he was still stuck tight. So he looked at the trees some more and spotted Owl sitting on a branch. "Hello, Pooh," said Owl. "Are you stuck?" "Oh, no," said Pooh. "I'm just resting." Owl swooped down from his branch. "Pooh," he said, "you are definitely stuck. You are a wedged bear in a great tightness. This situation calls for an expert." I wonder who the expert will be. "Did someone say expert?" asked Gopher. "Gopher's my name, digging's my game. Now what seems to be the problem?" He quickly inspected the situation. "The problem with this door," Gopher said, "is that it has a bear in it. Now we could dig him out or we could dynamite him out." "Dynamite?" Pooh said in a very small voice. "Dynamite!" exclaimed Owl. "Nonsense, we can't dynamite. We might hurt him." "Well, think it over," said Gopher, popping back down into his hole. "Let me know if you change your mind." Finally, Rabbit returned with Christopher Robin close behind. "Silly old bear," said Christopher Robin, shaking his head. Then he took hold of Pooh's paw, and Rabbit took hold of Christopher Robin's shirt, and they pulled and pulled and pulled. But Pooh was still stuck tight. "Pooh Bear," said Christopher Robin, "there's only one thing to do. We will just have to wait for you to get thin." So they all waited. Christopher Robin read stories to Pooh. Owl lectured him on the dangers of eating too much. Kanga brought Pooh a kerchief to protect his head from the sun. Eeyore made gloomy predictions about how long it might take for Pooh to get thinner. "It could be days," he said with a sigh. "Maybe weeks, even months," he added. Rabbit grew tired of seeing Pooh's bottom and legs where his front door used to be. So he wedged a picture frame around Pooh and put a lace doily on Pooh's bottom. "And now for a little dash of color," he said, and set a flower pot on top of the doily, on top of Pooh. But Pooh kicked his legs and the flower pot went crashing to the ground. Next, Rabbit found 2 branches that looked like antlers. With a paintbrush, he painted a moose face right on Pooh's bottom. For a finishing touch, Rabbit found a board and put it across Pooh's legs like a shelf. "Now that's more like it," he said. More time passed, and still Pooh wasn't getting any thinner. Kanga brought Roo for a visit. "I brought you some honeysuckle, Pooh," said Roo. "Honeysuckle?" asked Pooh hungrily. "No, Pooh," said Kanga, laughing. "You don't eat it. You smell it." Pooh buried his nose in the flowers and sniffed. "Mmm," he said. He sniffed again. Then his nose began to tickle. "Ah," he said once more. "Ah, ah, ah, choo!" Down came Rabbit's new shelf, knickknacks and all. Oh dear, said Rabbit crossly. Why did I ever invite that bear to lunch? That night, Pooh was awakened by Gopher, who popped up to eat his midnight lunch. Pooh watched hungrily as Gopher ate. When Gopher took a honey pot from his lunchbox, Pooh just couldn't stand it any longer. Please, Gopher, he pleaded. Could you spare a small smackerel of honey? Inside, Rabbit heard voices. Why, he was sure he had just heard someone give Pooh some honey. Honey that would make him fatter and keep him stuck in Rabbit's front door even longer. Stop! 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 Rabbit cried, and he rushed out his back door and around to the front just in time to snatch a honey pot from Pooh's paws. Not a bite, he snapped. Not a lick, not a drop. Then he made a sign and stuck it right up in front of Pooh where everyone could see it. Do you see the sign? Don't feed the bear. There's Gopher. Don't feed the bear. The next morning, Rabbit was busy tidying up. He mopped his brow and leaned against Pooh's bottom to rest. Pooh moved. He budged! Hooray! He budged! Rabbit cried. He budged! He bidged! He badged! He booged! He stopped to catch his breath. Christopher Robin, he said. I must get Christopher Robin. And out his back door, Rabbit went, off through the 100-acre wood just as fast as he could go. Which is probably pretty fast for a rabbit. Before Pooh knew it, along came a parade of his very good friends. Rabbit ran into his house and began to push Pooh's bottom. Christopher Robin grabbed Pooh's paws, Kanga grabbed Christopher Robin, Eeyore grabbed Kanga, Roo grabbed Eeyore, and they all pulled as hard as they possibly could. Just when they were beginning to think that perhaps Pooh hadn't budged at all, Rabbit backed up in his living room as far as he could go and ran across the floor as fast as he could run and threw himself at Pooh's bottom as hard as he could throw himself. Pop! Pooh flew out the doorway like a cork from a bottle and sailed across the grassy place in front of Rabbit's house, straight towards another honey tree. He landed head first, right inside the hole in the tree. There's a flying Pooh. Pooh's sudden appearance startled the bees, and they flew out of the tree and far away over the treetops. Winnie the Pooh considered his new surroundings. Everywhere he looked, he saw delicious, delightful, mouth-watering honey. Don't worry, Pooh, called Christopher Robin from way down below. We'll get you out. Oh, look, there's Minerva. Don't worry, Pooh. We'll get you out. Take your time, Christopher Robin, said Pooh. Take your time. The end. Well, this afternoon, I am going to check my bees. There's Minerva. I'm going to check my bees and see how they're doing. They're making babies right now is what the queen is doing, and hopefully starting to make honey for themselves now that there's some things growing and pollinating and they can find nectar and everything they need. So I want you to remember that it's okay to have great days and good days and bad days and grumpy days and sad days and hungry days and sleepy days and all of those things during this very complicated and confusing time that we've not done this before. So none of us really know how to do this best. And so the best thing we can do is be gentle with ourselves and the people that we share our lives with, and we can reach out to folks on the computer and the phone, and we can send cards, and we can do all of those good things to stay connected while we keep ourselves safe and healthy. And so Minerva and I want you to remember how very, very much we love you. Bye-bye.